Hi, my name is Tammy and thank you for joining me today. Did you buy the AccuQuilt Go cutter and you're concerned that using that cutter will waste too much fabric when you compare it to cutting your fabric with a rotary cutter? Well, stay tuned. I have 3 tips to show you that will help you reduce the risk of wasting fabric. The first tip is to pre-cut your yardage down to width of fabric strips. And what I mean by that is these strips. So this was once a yard of fabric and I just pre-cut it down to size. And the reason why I do that is because when you fan fold the fabric onto the die, if it's already pre-cut, that's the #1 way you can reduce using too much fabric and wasting it. So what I do is I take the die that I know that I'm going to use and I measure from, I don't know if you guys can see, measure from one dark gray side to the other dark gray side. And I just add, about a ½ inch. So if this is, let's say, 4 inches wide, I use my rotary cutter and my cutting mat to cut the width of fabric 4½ inches, so that when I place the fabric to cover the die, it's a little bit over the gray area, and what that does is it reduces the waste. So if you didn't pre-cut it, you would just have fabric going from this end of the die to that end of the die, and that just wastes more fabric. The #2 tip I have for you to reduce the wastage of fabric when using the AccuQuilt cutter, especially the Go is I pre-starch my fabric. So whether you have a fat quarter, whether you have yardage, you can buy yardage and cut it down into a ½ yard and then starch it, let it dry, and then do the measurement I just mentioned from here to here and add on a ¼ inch, ½ inch. Then once it's all dry and you do that, this is kind of like, I guess, with the fabric. So imagine that this was a ½ yard of fabric and it went from like here to here. I just used my rotary cutter to cut this strip. And again, that's another tip, tip #2, that you can use to not waste fabric when using the AccuQuilt Go. The third step is, or the third tip to not waste fabric when you're using the AccuQuilt Go cutter is, I know AccuQuilt says that you can cut up to 6 layers of cotton, but with the AccuQuilt Go if you saw my previous video, I will link it in the card above here. My previous video, you saw how difficult it was to get that sandwich through the cutter and to kind of catch onto the roller. So I typically only use 2 to 3 layers of fabric when I'm using my Go again, I use the fan folding technique, 2 to 3 layers. I put the mat on, and then what I do is when I insert the die sandwich into the cutter, I use my #1 tip, which is press down and forward, so that it engages with the roller and you just kind of roll it through. What I found is that if you use like 5 or 6 layers of fabric, when you use my method of pressing down and pressing forward, what it does is it requires more power, and then it shakes the cutter, and then not shakes it, but it moves the cutter. And anytime you move the cutter, what you're doing is you're increasing the risk that this sandwich will shimmy as it goes through the rollers. And if it shimmies as it goes through the roller, you're increasing your risk for a bad cut. And then you get it out, it's not cut properly, then you have to cut it again. And so that wastes fabric. So to recap, the 3 steps, the 3 tips that I have to reduce the risk of wasting fabric when using the AccuQuilt Go cutter, #1 is to cut down your yardage to width of fabric strips. #2, pre-starch your fabric in advance before you pre-cut it. I probably should have put that as #1. And the third tip is to, when using particularly the Go only cut 2 to 3 layers at a time. I also own the Go Big Electric, and with that one, I can easily put 6 layers through and it cuts no problem. There's no shimmy, not an issue. But with the Go Me, because it is their entry-level cutter, there is more manual labor required, and with that manual labor increases the risk of shimmying and just not getting the best cut. So thank you for joining me. Let me know if these 3 tips were helpful for you. If so, join me back for my next video and leave a comment down below. Let me know if those 3 tips were helpful, if you found another tip that's helpful when using the Go Me, and let me know if there's any particular videos that you would like to see me make using the Go Me. Totally appreciate your time, and thanks for staying through and watching this quick little video. Until I see you again, take care. Bye-bye.